Hi, I'm Anthony Parker, owner of ASP Enterprises LLC, a financial services company, and ASP Logistics, a delivery service provider, and recent retiree of Consumers Energy. Also, I am a member of the Jackson Juneteenth Committee. To become and stay successful in business, especially as an African American, requires one to possess a tremendous amount of perseverance, resilience, and determination. One must fight and beat the odds of failure that is oftentimes stacked against them. I present to you a business owner for more than 50 years, Golden Gibson of Body Works Reconditioning. Who is Golden Gibson? Tell me about you, how long you've been in Jackson, and just tell me a little bit about yourself, where you graduated from, or did you go to college, that sort of thing.
I was raised in Jackson, been a lifelong citizen of this community. I am 75 years old, been through it all, seen a lot, experienced a lot, and have been grateful to a good community. My life began on the east side of Jackson, and I went to East Junior High School, and we just had wonderful times, good memories. I went on to be a musician. And I think one of the greatest influences was that I was able to obtain scholarships to Western Michigan and Wayne State. I was a drummer. The greatest influence there was a teacher named Ray Burnett. And he taught in the Jackson Public Schools for, I think, 35 to 40 years. But in music, we always had a challenge. And there was one individual that I was always faced against was Dennis Pienta. And Dennis's parents always had the money to give him all the private lessons and stuff. My mother never had that kind of money. Mr. Burnett recognized on a challenge one day, hey, this guy has been practicing and performing. And I became the first chair. And that right there gave ambition to do other things. I went on to Jackson High School and became, in 1965, the first black student body president of Jackson High. And I think Jackson High had been in existence since, what, 1800s? And that was a focal point. I gave the graduation speech and got a standing ovation. Mr. Holman wrote to me before he died the impression of the community and the people that heard my speech. From there, I went to Western Michigan and performed, played in the marching band, played in the Kalamazoo Symphony. And those were great times because at halftime, here we were boogling, and I had a little drum set out front, and I was the man. But, yeah. I came back home and started working for Citibank and in computer operations. Met a lot of people, a lot of friends, a lot of influential people. Back then, Jackson, was polarized because of the racial issues. Heavy.
About what years were those?
That would have been 1975, 78, 80s.
Okay.
Our community was a lot different. It was defined. Black people lived on the south side or the east side.
Okay.
Few lived on the north side. And there was always a criminal crime act in Jackson that was just horrible. The prejudice factor was abundant. Black people worked in factories but couldn't get loans. Black people worked in factories and built this community but couldn't build a beautiful home.
Yeah.
You couldn't go to the bank and get a loan, but you could stack up money. And the highest point was what kind of car you drove, because it wasn't what kind of house you had.
To go in business for yourself, maybe you can tell me a little bit about that.
Well, the big decision was I had party stores.
Party stores?
Gold mine party stores.
Okay.
And then back in the 70s and 80s, there was a rush to have black people in business, downtown particularly. And while I was working for Commonwealth Associates, I developed a men's shirt and tie shop. And I was always in, called the Gallows. I was always in competition with Bacon. Charles Bacon had a clothing store. There was one of three blacks, and the other was Vernon Morrell, and he had beautiful clothing store down on Michigan Avenue.
Downtown?
Downtown, and that began an inspiration and determination to, you got that competition there. I'm a competitor.
Yeah. What was the thing that made you decide, you know what, I'm going to go in business for myself? What was that moment?
My father was like one of the greatest entrepreneurs. Started a insurance company in Gary, Indiana. I remember Doug McCready and all the people at Michigan Seed Company. Doug was a very influential person in my life. Doug McCready, Pat Patrick, Dr. Sill, Judge Justin, Dr. Willoughby.
So they had some influence in your life, though. I mean, some
yes.
positive influence to make you think about going into business for yourself. And about how long ago was it when you first went into business? Was that back in what years about was that?
I've been in business actually Body Works has been in existence for 50 years.
For 50 years?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And but that wasn't my first business. I started the Double G riding stables at Ellisharp Park when I was 24 years old. And that in itself was the highlight of any community businessman, black businessman participation. Was it
a horseback riding stables, and how many horses did you have?
Horseback riding stables for the community of Jackson. And you had to have the approval of the City Commission, the Parks and Recreation Commission, and we started that with 13 horses, and it was so overwhelming, the participation, that it became hard to operate with just 13 horses.
Because there's such a demand for it? Is that what it was?
Demand, oh my goodness. And we ran 2 and 3 hour waiting lists. the only thing that was different is that you were working horses, and you tried to get the city to understand that you needed a rotation. 13 horses just weren't enough.
Were you limited in trying to get like some additional horses, or financing to get additional horses?
The financing wasn't the big thing back then. The regulation that we could only have 13 horses.
Oh, that was a city regulation that limited you to 13 horses. Man, I would imagine that was such a demand. I mean, that would be what a jewel that would be for Jackson right now. I mean, that would have been.
We had a lot of problems. People sometimes thought it was management problems because, you had 13 horses. Phil Bennett was the parks manager, and he came to me like 10 years after we had closed up and apologized for his lack of understanding about black business, about being in business, about the horses, things that he did and said, and his performance really hurt us. Gary Lamb and Howard Wood and all of them, they were all behind us. But I remember there were certain things that brick walls we ran up against. One, and was trying to get more horses. And people didn't understand, you're gonna get saddle sores on horses, sweaty days, the demands, and some people, we had guided tours through Ellis Sharp Park. We developed all the trails. We did everything, including putting in the water and stuff, the water system.
Even the trails that are out there right now, those were
some of them.
Oh, those are some of the trails that you you created back
back in the 70s.
In the 70s.
80s. There was a lot of violence in Ellis Sharp Park. And I remember a woman named Mrs. Pond, and her group came against the black existence in Ellis Sharp Park, because back then the community, every Sunday they could go and there were nice concerts at the park and riding stables at the park. There was a swimming pool at the park. There was just an enormity of activities there to try to keep people active, to keep kids active. When black kids were there using the pool, that became a problem. When blacks came into the park riding horses or playing or doing whatever they did, that was a problem for a lot of white people. And I remember Jimmy Johnson was one of the first entrepreneurs in Ellis Sharp Park. He was selling ice cream sandwiches and stuff out of a little. And they just gave him the flux. But Mrs. Pond and them came against us, whole organization. I mean, I've never seen anything like it.
Sounds like a wonderful business.
Until we had a fire.
Oh, so what happened with this fire?
Well, it burned down the Double G riding stables. And people said, "Oh my goodness, Goldie burned down the riding stables to collect the insurance." Well, we never had insurance. And people came to my rescue. Doug McCready, Dr. Jerry Booth, Lindy McCready, they all came out and helped me rebuild.
And knowing that you had nothing to do with the fire, that probably really
lost 16.
Tore your business down.
Yeah, lost 16 horses.
So, given all of your experience, would you recommend that another black person go into business, like in the in the auto industry like you were in the body works or selling cars, what would be your advice to?
I would recommend that anybody find a niche.
Find a niche.
Find a niche and develop your own ideas. Make your own money.
Yeah.
And dealing in corporate America is sometimes difficult.
Right.
But dealing out here in the streets is even more difficult.
Yeah.